Okay, so this is my process for editing a podcast episode. I actually live in Adobe Premiere, and even though that's a video editing software, that's just where I'm most comfortable. So that's what I do. And occasionally there are video elements to our podcast that I like to have. Okay, so these are the files that we're going to need. We got some WAV files and a few little video clips from my phone. So I start off by opening up Audition because I have a few editing presets in here that I really like. They're just so quick and clean. I do my recording on a Zoom H6. We usually only need 3 inputs. Occasionally we'll use 4. I also have the adapter that allows us to use up to 6 inputs. So these 4 effects are what I use to every audio clip. Sometimes I use a channel mixer, sometimes not, but definitely the speech volume leveler, which as you can see,
like kind of bringing them all in is such an essential
this top bar is the input, the bottom is the output. And when it levels the audio,
before engaging them in that, I think
it just brings it up to an acceptable range and just kind of evens out some of the peaks and valleys so that it's all audible. Now, in some cases, it does bring up the lower levels too much, and I don't like that. So it is something that I keep an eye on. Also, I use the denoiser. It just takes out some of the just background hiss, or like if you happen to hear the HVAC system in the background, it removes some of that. And then de-reverb also helps with a little bit of the echo. I used to be using kind of a cheaper podcast mic that you could only get for $50, you know. But now we use the Shure SM58. It's a great microphone. It's amazing how clean things sound. And I actually don't even have to do much of this at all. I do it anyway just in case, but even straight out of the recorder, the audio is pretty good.
like how they're going to engage with them.
Okay, so I apply that. Takes a minute to do some of the work. So what I'll do is then I will save that as, and I'll just name it in a way that makes sense. And then I call it clean. And then I repeat the process for the other 2 files. And then apply that effect to his recording as well. Rename and save it. And then on this one, I only have 1 channel.
About how I approach my students. I first read.
It's only coming through on the right channel. So in this case, as I apply those effects, I will turn on the channel mixer.
The energy of the room and see what.
So that it sends it out on both channels. And that's just kind of how the H6 works. Inputs 1 and 2 are stereo recordings. Inputs 3 and 4 are mono recordings on the left and right channel. And that's just kind of how the H6 works. Okay, now that I've got those 3 recordings, I am done with Audition. So I will fire up Premiere. So now I've got lots of files here that I actually don't need all of them. I just want the clean ones. So what we'll do here, I'm going to import the whole folder just because it's quicker and easier. So we'll find that here. And there are some file formats that aren't recognized, like the PKF files. Doesn't matter. Don't need them. And then just for the heck of it, I will also just delete these out of my project because I don't need them. I only need the clean versions. So I've got my timeline here. I'll drop my recordings in here. And for right now, I leave them at the 0 marker because I'm going to sync that with some these video clips here. So we'll just drop those in here. I like to recolor these. I have some keyboard shortcuts. That just helps me visualize who's talking when and for how long. So on these video clips, okay, so I start off by pointing my camera at the screen of my recorder. I'll make a cut there, and I'll go to 256.00. So at that point, I know that that's where the clip goes. And I usually have to tweak it a little bit. You can see the waveform is a little bit off, so I have to adjust it a few frames. So right as it switches to 538, we'll make a cut. Then we'll go to 538 and paste it in there. Okay. So I realize this is kind of an old school way of doing it. You can use the synchronize effect. I have had mixed success with that. Maybe I just need to get better at using it. But it hasn't always worked real well for me, so I'm doing it old school. Okay, so I do have my video clips in place now. And what I will do now, I'll go through and start trimming. I've got this music intro, which is standard, and the interview always starts here at about 12 seconds in. So I'll just go through and start trimming away at my clips, isolating each individual on their track. Lining it up here with that marker, which is where I want the speaker to come in.
Welcome to Bite Size PL, professional learning you can consume during lunch, on a dog walk, or while shoveling snow. Our goal is to provide meaningful, engaging, and brief conversations for educators. I'm Jared, and my co-host today is Kate. Hey, Jared.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is just kind of visually looking at the timeline. Like I see the waveform and I can tell when certain people are speaking. I don't know that this is the best way to do it. I'm sure this could be automated, but I also like having that personal touch so I know exactly what is being said. If there's a better way to do this, I would love some feedback. But I'm basically just cutting out the dead space of everyone. And you can see here there are some moments where she's saying some things, maybe she's just laughing, and I want to keep that in. So I'm just going to go through the timeline here and cut out these gaps. Now that I've got it cut into pieces, I'll go through another time, my second pass, and I'll refine the cut a little bit more. Sometimes you have a host that has a rough start, like they ask a question and it takes them a while to get it out and it doesn't come out right. So I'll trim that up, try to make everyone sound just as good as possible. So this is my second pass. And at this point, I will also trim these video clips into usable sections so that when I look at my timeline, I just know those sections I can use for video.
Noticed how like these ice cubes float in a glass, and I think as soon as they can get that buy-in, they're ready to learn.
Okay, here's another thing that I'm going to try. Open up our text space, and we're going to transcribe this. This is a pretty slick new tool that I've come to like. I haven't fully got into text-based editing because, again, I do like to hear how it flows, and I like to make some of those decisions myself. But as it turns out, Adobe does a pretty good job of cutting out just the right part of the word, and it often does flow pretty well. Obviously, some sentences just can't be fixed. Like if they come out really awkward, you can massage it as much as you want, but it's just not going to sound right. Sometimes you just have to leave the mistakes in because that still sounds better than trying to fix the mistakes. I am at a point where I think that the cut is good, it's acceptable, and I have a transcript here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export the transcript just as a text file, okay? And then I like to take that text, copy it into ChatGPT and say, summarize this transcript into 2 sentences. Paste it, and then this becomes just a brief description of the podcast episode. So I'll adjust this paragraph as needed, but boy, that saves me a lot of time. Now what I like to do is say, now suggest 10 possible titles. And I'll say, give me 10 more ideas, emphasizing the word creativity. And I spelled it wrong, but it knows what I'm talking about. Okay, and as I look at these, I think I like this one. So back into Premiere. I am actually going to rename this sequence. Instead of just episode name, we'll call it that. Creative Classrooms. I don't need the what comes after the colon. We'll just call it Creative Classrooms. Okay, so now I'm going to export this as an MP3, and it's called episode 123, Creative Classrooms. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll make like a Instagram teaser as well. So we will, and from these video sections, I can copy those. You can find the one I like, copy it into that Instagram timeline. So then we will also update this so that it is the title, and we will again call this Creative Classrooms. Cool. Now what we're going to do is in our text panel, we're going to go to Captions, create captions from transcript. So this is actually a copied sequence, and the text is coming from, this text does not match what is currently in the sequence. So what we need to do is we need to retranscribe the sequence. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to create some captions. I don't love this tiny little font, so I've got a standard that I use. Boom. And I just have to make one adjustment here. Okay. So that is where I want it. And it does a pretty good job of making the captions. I just feel like it doesn't always recognize what's a sentence and what is a continuing thought. Okay, so I think that is a pretty good teaser that sums up the episode quite well. So we're going to export that. So that is my process for editing a podcast episode along with a social media teaser. I wonder if anyone else does it differently. Maybe you do everything in Audition or something else. I'd be curious to hear what other people do, so let me know. Always looking to improve, but hopefully you found this useful. So have a good day.